A very great welcome to you, Honourable Joseph Cudjoe. Thanks again for joining us in the studio.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So you were taking your turn yesterday at the Ministry of Information at the regular ministerial press briefing, and we're talking about, we're addressing the public on plans, perhaps. Are they confirmed to divest the state of certain state-owned enterprises? Are they actually confirmed plans, or are they perhaps things that you're thinking about?
Thanks so much, and my greetings to your audience. I must say that since His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo took reins of government of this country, he has carried the vision and continue to push it, that public enterprises deviate from their past performance record. You know, from Nkrumah's from first president of this country, Kwame Nkrumah's time, Ghana has tried, so far as its industrialization effort is concerned. I knew of the big push program where Ghana were almost manufacturing everything, including cars, even automobiles. You know, we had our brand, Adom, and then Boafo brand. When South Korea were starting their Hyundai and the Kia brands.
Oh, wow.
But where is ours? When South Korea was starting their Samsung and the current LG, we also had our brands in here, Akasanoma.
Indeed.
And some other brand.
Those of us who are getting
Sanyo.
Zanyo.
We had Ghana Sanyo Akasa, exactly.
Those of us who are old enough will remember those Akasanoma radios.
Yes,
absolutely.
Where are they now?
Yes, so Nkrumah's famed was at 77 factories that were set up, and it's everything from food processing to housing,
safety matches, production,
cars,
sugar.
and, the works.
We're doing everything. But today, where are they? So the current president, his vision is enough of that non-performance and collapsing of state enterprises. So his approach was that the formula that existed, that you have a certain state enterprises commission which sees to performance of the state enterprises, and then in existence parallel to that is diversity implementation committee, which seeks to sell off when an enterprise collapses. So it is like we know we have put in place a structure to set it up, run it down, and divest to sell.
It's only selling like unworkable assets, not profitable and healthy organizations.
That's it. So
right.
From 2017, the president started the effort of making sure that we put a stop to that era where state enterprises just exist and then get collapsed and get sold off. Restructuring of the oversight scheme or strategy started, and in 2019 SEC, State Enterprises Commission, and Diversity Implementation Committee were put together to form SIGA, State Interest and Governance Authority, so that proper corporate governance practices and proper oversight will be delivered to ensure that the companies perform. So SIGA Act, the law came into effect, and the law provided for appointment of a minister to be responsible for SIGA, and that first appointment to that effect happened to be in myself. And
in your good self, with the head of SIGA, the second head of SIGA now, Edward Boateng.
Edward, exactly.
Former ambassador.
Exactly. So we are working and making sure that the president's vision is attained in the way he sees it. Now, when I took office, I realized the size, the enormity of the work. The portfolio as I knew it, comprise today the published register of these institutions. The published register contains 175.
175 state-owned entities.
We'll get the terms sorted for you
a bit later on. Yeah.
The 175 entities come in three categories. First category, which is so popular and we know of all the time, is the state-owned enterprises, SOEs. There are 53 of them. And that 53, the government motive for setting them up was to operate commercially, make profits, and write dividend checks to support government budgets. That's the motive. You are commercial. And the second category is the joint venture companies, where government, in partnership with private sector player or players, will set up an enterprise also for profit motive, but largely management of these enterprises are in private sector hands or partnership in terms of management governance, where the board is concerned, management is concerned, but they are also profit driven.
Right.
And there are 47 of them, the total making 100. And then there is a third category called other state entities, OSEs. The first category is SOEs.
Yes.
This third category is OSEs. And the OSEs, as described in the SIGA law, are the public corporations. And these public corporations and these regulators, whose mandate generally is to provide sector regulations.
Right. So this includes everybody from the PURC or not?
PURC is also a regulator.
Right.
But with the autonomy and the mandate it has to regulate tariff.
Right.
Utility tariffs.
That's
that. Yeah. But Energy Commission, for example, is one, providing technical regulation.
Okay.
Petroleum Commission, for example, is a regulator.
Right.
And if you take, there are public corporations, Ghana Port and Harbors Authority.
Right.
Quasi-regulator, but a lot of them, 75 of them. There are 75.
The largest single category.
It is the largest single, category.
And they do not exist to make profit.
Profits, yes.
Right.
The motivation is not to make profit, but to deliver services efficiently.
Right.
Because their service delivery interfaces with the private sector players for various across various industries. NPA, National Petroleum Authority, downstream petroleum industry regulator. Petroleum Commission, upstream industry regulator. Ghana Ports, Ghana Maritime Authority, Ghana Community Water and Sanitation Authority. There are a lot of them, 75. DVLA. So you
Ghana
can see
Standards Authority.
Ghana Standards Authority, Food and Drugs Authority. So these entities interface the private sector. Where we certain possibly you may be interfacing with National Communications Authority.
That's right.
Okay, so you see the media industry interfacing with a certain regulator that regulates that industry. It is recommended of them not to make profits, but to deliver their services efficiently.
Yes.
That is what the Constitution says. They are to deliver their services efficiently, because efficient service delivery to what you do enable you to do it better, faster, and the economy ticks. So they are there to operate efficiently so that what the private sector does, that's the economic activities they regulate, will be done better and faster. So
Mm.
these are the three categories. That's the scope of the portfolio.
Right.
but the portfolio extended to some additional 17, which were defunct. The 175 are working.
They're actually functional.
They are functional. But the 17 are defunct, collapsed. They are in the bush. They are. You go to them, you visit them. I think what you see will be rats and snakes and
the very sad face of white elephants of kind of bold intentions in the past, maybe to create state-owned enterprises,
yes.
but defunct, as you said, in a state of disuse. I'm glad you clarified that, because I was assuming that the 17 that you spoke about in your briefing yesterday were in the SOEs category of functioning state-owned enterprises. Now, amongst the things I believe you mentioned, or the entities you mentioned during your briefing, the Abosso glass factories and their central stores, the bungalow of the Bolgatanga meat factory, the clinic of Bonsa tire factory. Now, are we talking about elements of defunct institutions being sold, or is it the whole institutions that are defunct being disposed of?
I'm happy you are bringing this distinction, clarity to your audience, your listeners. We are talking about the entities, but I showed some pictures for people to understand the state in which these enterprises are.
The state of disrepair.
So that people do not generate that sensationalism as if they are functional enterprises. So if you go to a Abosso glass factory, I showed, is it their stores? This is not a functional, it's in the bush. It's nothing there. And look at how their stores even look like. You go to Northern Tomato, some other picture.
Is this in Mpualugu?
Mpualugu, yeah. You can see a bungalow. You can see, you go to here, you can see a research. These are all dead. In fact, maybe I should have used dead companies instead of even defunct. They are dead.
Right.
But the state keep incurring costs by way of security, who should watch the assets, and doing nothing. Why should my taxes be collected to pay people to look after these assets forever? At a point in time, they should be disposed of, and the money used for either capital reinjection into those that are functioning and need capital, or to deliver public goods and service. The police need equipment. We need roads. We need hospitals. We need schools. So why should we have these assets littered in the bush and we're crying for money?
And are these assets that maybe not the current government but previous governments have tried to dispose of, sell off, and unsuccessfully so?
Exactly. They were put, most or all were already on divestiture lists, and people didn't even warn them. So the only thing we're doing now is that we are highlighting them. They are available. If people, you get private interests, people going in for them, then that's fine. We can get some, Minister of Finance can get some few CDs to support its budget. And when those that are functional now, a lot of them also need capital injection. If we can get some few Ghana cedis to invest in those that also need capital for their operation. So that's the kind of portfolio review we've done. The defunct ones, we can't, in fact, we do not have money today to think of going to invest in them. And I wouldn't sit in government and say, if government were to get some money today, don't use it to pay pensioners who are picketing. Don't use it to develop roads, which we need so much of. Don't use it to educate us better and more. Don't use it to deliver health services, but go and invest in these junk assets. I wouldn't make that economic decision at all. So the recommendation that us has come from even is that these big accountancy firms, is it Ernst & Young and PwC and so on,
the international consultancy
these international consultancy firms were for government itself to take these corporate actions. But I think we should have even done it and not wasted time for the asset to degenerate into this level of destruction before we even dispose of them.
So the retention of the assets was something to do with the state's difficulty in disposing of them.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Difficulty. Private interests were not there, but I don't know whether today there will be that interest. But we have said they are available. We want to dispose of them.
It sounds like a sort of advanced form of asset stripping, which is a kind of phrase that normally most people hear, and it sends the shivers up their spine. But what you're saying is that at the moment they are actually a financial burden on the state, because despite the fact that they are unworkable, they're not functioning, the state has no hope of reviving them as institutions, as working businesses of any description. The state is having to invest money on the level of even just security, making sure that there are not intruders on the premises, while it has no money to actually
reinvest in them,
revive them, inject new life into them. Is there any kind of limitation that the Ministry of Public Enterprises and SEGA will be placing on the kinds of buyers who are allowed to acquire these assets? As you said, these are 17, and I hope that's the extent of it. You may be about to tell us that there are more that are dodos that are extinct, but it's just 17.
We know before coming public to this effect, I had sought jointly with the Minister of Finance to get these assets disposed of. I had sought cabinet approval to that effect. So cabinet has approved, and there are 17 on the list.
Right.
Now, one has to first perfect the asset ownership. That if government is going to sell, be sure it is yours. Be sure
100%.
Be sure in the past a private man hadn't bought it, and you are doing double sale, else they will take you to court.
Sure.
So there are processes that, because they've been on the list of divestiture. That's why perfection of ownership is important in this case.
Right.
So once that level is cleared, then valuation of the asset, and I'm happy you invoked the term advanced form of asset stripping. Yes. Because there are some of them, like if you take state construction company, may as an entity may have a house sitting in Tema, and may have another land undeveloped or developed, or some junk house sitting in, say, Kumasi. You can't sell as a going concern. It's to get better value. If you try selling it as a company, you won't get the best of value, because the company is dysfunctional. In this case, you can get better value if you sell the assets in Tema, in isolation.
So you ring fence the assets,
exactly,
which may have commercial value rather than the company.
You value them and then advertise them for disposal. The limitation as to who, no limitation. It's any interested party that can. There are some people who have indicated that they can make sense of some of the defunct entities. That is even my preference, and that is the Minister of Finance's preference. That if, for example, you take Northern Star Tomato and you can make sense. Making sense would mean that you can go and revamp it when you, the private investor, takes hold of it. Then it means it's going to contribute to a production base of
and
the country.
serve its original purpose.
Exactly.
So revive it in that way.
that Abosu glass factory, if a private investor comes in and can stay the business and produce glass, because we are importing our glass, meanwhile we have the raw material base here, then it's good for us. But at this stage, Ghana government doesn't have money to do it. And I wouldn't even advise that Ghana government attempt to do it. Use the money to do a school, road, equip the police, the security agencies to protect us, rather than going on this adventure again when our history doesn't support success.
There are more urgent priorities,
exactly.
as you see it, but to the people of the areas where some of these entities are sited, it might be of importance because they have a historical attachment to it as the center of their economic life and have maybe an idea of what it could do for the lives of their locales, even if it has never quite played that role. I wondered, in relation to either the SOEs or joint ventures in which you're involved, whether what you have announced yesterday with these defunct companies marks the start where, for example, you say there are 175 state enterprises overall, state entities overall.
Some partially owned, some fully owned.
Some fully owned.
Exactly.
And you have begun the process of review of some of them. Now, some of them have, even though they've been a great success in the recent past, such as, for example, STC, the former state transport company.
Bost.
Yes, indeed. Suffered greatly, STC's case during COVID because of the lockdown. Bost being a remarkable example of recovery because of some very hard and determined work by its leadership to turn it around to profitability. For the first time in decades.
In its history. The company's history.
Wow. So examples of achievement there. But where such institutions that you like, if you like, are coming in from the cold, are beginning to re-establish a base of profitability, but might have these stray assets, as you're talking about, that are not so valuable. Is this something that perhaps is going to become a way of working forward, that you will encourage them to dispose of individual aspects that might be weighing down their balance sheet and may no longer be viable?
Interesting. I like this corporate conversation. You do understand and appreciate. What we in the public space, maybe mass education is not there, is the fact that a company may have an asset that is not useful to it. And the best the company can do is to dispose of that asset and reinvest the capital generated in areas of profitability. These are things that happen in the private sector all the time. So you don't get a private sector enterprise that is holding just assets for the sake of just having assets. Because the metrics for assessing performance, one of them, key to financiers, is return on assets. Return on assets. I'll cite one example of huge inefficiency in the public and enterprise space. Ghana Post, if you look at the building they sit in prime area in Accra, and when you value it and you get to understand that its business is only able to generate revenue less than 200 million Ghana cedis, and that its profit is of the order of an amount less than 5 million Ghana cedis. I'm being charitable. It's far lower. Because the current MD is doing, and the team, they are doing very well trying to sweat their assets so that their return on asset metric will be better. They sit on huge assets. But this is for the taxpayer, and the taxpayer doesn't see anything wrong with it. That why would you be sitting on these assets and generating little money when unemployment is an issue in this country? When the asset can be sweated and more jobs can be created out of it.
Yeah.
We don't do that evaluation. We don't ask those critical questions. But a private sector person is doing that. Little assets, more revenue, more profit. Whereas the public, it is the reverse. Big assets, less revenue, losses, or less profit. That is how we have, we just love owning assets without asking critical questions. What is this asset really bringing? Meanwhile, it is my tax, your tax, and every listener's tax. Money sitting and idling like that. This is the kind of efficient decisions we want to make by getting the public enterprises to sweat their assets like boss is doing. Okay, so that they start getting return on assets as an indicator of performance. Equity, government ownership in this. If you go to private sector in respective industries, return on equity in telecom sector, for example, is a positive indicator because it's a profitable, and government owning equity in the same industry, telecom sector, return on equity is negative. You go to the cocoa value chain, the service providers in the value chain, hauliers, LBCs, licensed buying companies, there are private enterprises in there. Return on equity positive, government return on equity negative. So why are you owning them? For what? Two things should happen. One of two things should happen. Either you do a turnaround plan and bring it to profitability for it to make sense owning them, or you hand it over to a private sector, provide perform efficiently, make profit, and government take the tax. Because either way, the asset is on the land of the country, and you either go in for profit to support your budget or tax to support your budget. If government owning and managing them it's not bringing revenue to support budget, why don't you give to private sector to bring in the revenue tax to support the budget?
Yes.
Those are engagements we are doing. So we are reviewing the whole portfolio. There are other strategies like listing on stock exchange if it's profitable and it can attract buyers when listed. All these corporate decisions we are making advise government policy appropriately, and then we get the public enterprises performing to generate jobs in the economy.
A reminder, you're listening to the Asasa Breakfast Show, where we're honoured to have in the studio Joseph Cudjoe, the Minister of Public Enterprises, talking about his announcement yesterday that 17 state assets, let's put it that way, already listed for divestiture, virtually defunct, are definitely going to be disposed of by the state. Just slightly backtracking, Honourable Cudjoe, to the question of the value of the enterprises in the places where they're located. So there are all these myths, for example, around the Abossa glass factory, and people speak of it again very, with rose-tinted lenses, when it was set up in Nkrumah's time, and the promise that it generated, or even of Ichampong era interventions, the car assembly plants, or which since then have been left to dwindle and perhaps not to produce the results they have. The assumption is that once there are people employed there, if only as security, well, then they're creating some employment, that we don't also expose ourselves to the great danger that there is in some cases. For example, there was talk about the decommissioning of the Solpon oil field in the past year or so, and an agreement having been reached with a willing buyer. it was definitely being decommissioned. It was taken out of use, but there are companies that make use of assets that are being decommissioned. But the party that the state had entered into an agreement with, going in there before everything had been signed on the dotted line and everything agreed, and beginning to strip the assets. What assurances do you have for the people employed at the moment, presumably public servants, whether they're security guards, whether they're cleaning people, whether they're skeletal administrative staff? What assurances do you have about their jobs, what's going to happen to their jobs, and for the people in the communities, what's going to happen with the assets, how far the new buyers can take over the assets and do different things with them?
Okay, because there are ways we can make this kind of conversation clearer. So I'll toe your line, use one specific entity for discussion, so that the point you are making will be highlighted for everybody's understanding. Let's take Bonsa Ties Company.
The factory.
It was set up to serve a purpose, and it's in that area, Grand Kwanta to Takwa area.
The western region.
Yes, because when it comes to factory location, it was the best location you can get. Tropical forest, rubber plantation,
near the source
raw
of
material,
the rubber.
exactly. So that you don't have to carry rubber to Tema before you come and kind of turn into a secondary product. But then we were also starting automobile industry, and this was to become a key component that Ghana produces ties. Okay, so we started. Now defunct. Stopped producing ties years ago. I don't remember the last time anybody saw made in Ghana ties. The company is defunct. The assets have been left to rot, go waste to date. Maybe in the past, if we had taken the step we are taking today, the assets may have been fresh. That is, if the company were active and producing, and invitation of a private investor were made, maybe the company would have been functional by now. But we wasted all the opportunity and got the plant, machines. If you have a whole machine installed, even your car, when you park your car for 5 years unused, it becomes scrap. So if you could leave a whole plant like that unused for 20 years, what is it again? By 20 years, new equipment are in, obsolescence has set in, and you can't really make use of whatever exists in there. So the company has been left to rot down. But interestingly, the rubber plantations have been increasing. Ghana Rubber Estate.
GREL.
Exactly. Now doing cooperative farms and supporting others, private people to do farms. When you go to the area, the rubber growing industry is expanding. And we exporting raw rubber. When it can become an input to a factory, the government doesn't have money to go and invest in the Bonsa tie. But with this offer we've made, that the Bonsa tie is available, the factory site is available, it's defunct. The staff there, because the company is defunct, the company doesn't even have any bank account anywhere. No bank.
It has no bank. This extraordinary state of rundown of affairs.
Exactly, gone.
No assets.
No bank in the country can say, I hold bank account of, what are they selling to come and deposit into it? Nothing. So those security guys that are just watching over the assets, they are paid by SIGA. SIGA puts 1 or 2 people there. But in any case, any useful part of the asset has been stolen in the past already. So there's really nothing there to even...
The asset has already been stripped.
Stripped. So for me, when you look at the assessment, the preliminary assessment that has been done, for me, as somebody who understands these things, I would say it is land that is for sale. That is how I'll put it. But when you say land that is for sale, government doesn't sell land. You start going into controversies. Are you getting me?
Sure.
It is land is an asset. So whatever form of asset it is, the building there, when a private sector person comes there, will pull it down. The person is just buying a location of a factory.
Right.
Yeah. So we want that disposal to happen so that the community that desires jobs so much will have an investor in there that set up the same factory, hopefully, and then employment will be generated in that community.
Right.
And social services, CSR functions will go on, and then there will be economic life again in that community. That's the essence of this exercise. We are hoping that if even the private buyer says, instead of ties, you won't do automobile ties, the Firestone ties that they were producing, but it will do rubber.
Bicycle tires.
Rubber.
Yeah.
Rubber has.
It has all sorts of uses.
A lot of. So they will do other rubber products other than automobile ties.
Yeah.
So be it. But there will be economic activity there, and people there will get employment. Similarly, a Bosso glass factory, if you come get somebody, we're importing all the glass. If you get a private investor that comes in with the capital and the technology and management and all the soft side to come and revamp it, you generate job in that location. So it's an effort to bring economic life to these communities again. That's why we are saying dispose of.
Look, I'm just curious to learn if there is, and I'm going to use Bonsa as an example. We've just seen the AFCFTA take off. There is evidence of a growing vehicle manufacturing on the continent.
Yeah.
Definitely, no matter how we toss and turn it, vehicles will use tires.
Yes.
Once upon a time, we produced it.
Yeah.
Have we explored joint ventures for some strategic opportunities like a Bonsa Tires coming back on stream with private capital, but with some state, coming together with this private investment to get the factory back up?
What it is at the moment is that I'm happy this angle is coming up. Vehicle assembling, automobile manufacturing companies are establishing assembling plants in Ghana.
Yeah.
A typical assembling plant brings in, it's more like logistics is at the center of its operations. The glass windscreen is coming from a location of a factory producing windscreen.
That's right.
The ties are coming from a certain factory producing ties. The battery is coming from a certain factory located somewhere, and a lot of even different countries.
That's right.
And bringing to this location. For the vision the president carries, bringing these assembling plants, that's where you start. You start the assembling. When you start like that, and a battery manufacturer sees that there is critical mass market in Ghana because VW is bringing in battery, Nissan is bringing in battery,
Sinotruk.
Peugeot is bringing in battery, and there's critical mass market of batteries in Ghana. It attracts a certain battery manufacturer to come and manufacture battery in Ghana. And the vehicle assembling plant also see it as cost efficient because transportation cost is minimized. Instead of bringing it maybe from Chile or Brazil or some distant location, sourcing locally may be cheaper, especially when we produce at competitive price. And then the African Continental Free Trade Area market comes to add to the market because there is incentive to produce in Ghana and also export to other African countries. So if these automobile manufacturing companies are going to assemble in Ghana and export, and the market is big, then the battery market will be big. The windscreen market will be big. Every part of the vehicle, steel, that comes in the body. You are doing integrated aluminum and steel. That also sees markets. So every component of the vehicle, you will see the aluminum parts. You are doing integrated aluminum industry to produce downstream aluminum products. That begins to come together, but it's all driven by market size. That would attract the producers of these parts to establish in Ghana to produce the components that will be also procured by the assembling companies rather from here rather than from across the globe.
I suppose, just to buttress Kweku's question, the question that comes to most people's minds hearing about an exercise such as the one you presented yesterday is how it helps us join the dots as a country. Yep. So you talk about Bonsa as a rundown, unfortunately unworkable enterprise at the moment, despite its ideal situation. And the fact, as you said, that when you go to the area now, you can see that the rubber plantation industry is actually taking off.
Yes.
You've had the recent launch of a One District, One Factory initiative, the Narubi's factory.
Yes.
And I suppose what people are asking is, perhaps in relation to this is a useful example, how you might be able to marry up what is happening in One District, One Factory with looking to establish an industry that promotes the cultivation of rubber and employment of people in the area with the running down of this enterprise. Similarly, on the level of accountability, you talked about people having stripped the assets, everything of value that might have belonged to Abosso or Bonsa having been stolen in the past. The crucial question of how companies are audited and how they account back to the state for what they are doing on a month-to-month, year-to-year basis. How will this exercise with the 17 that you launched yesterday help us begin to join some of those dots?
Interesting. That's a management issue, and that is where we have lacked as a country. A private owner of an enterprise, shareholder, owner of an enterprise, certainly follows up on performance. And one report that is so key to be able to assess performance and continue, even adding more capital or taking profit or not, is financial reporting, preparing accounts and getting the account audited. Because if you own a company and you walk in there, a factory site, as an owner, all that you see is buildings and human beings walking around and machines moving, part of machines moving. That's what you see. But whether the company is doing well or not, it is not the machine that is moving. That will tell you the company is doing well. It is the financials. We've been able to generate revenue this year, $2 million. Next year, $2.2 million. Next 2 years, $5 million. Then you know there's growth. If they need more capital, you are encouraged to add capital. But it comes from financial reporting, quarterly reporting, annual reporting, and then annual general meeting to take a review, prepare annual budgets, prepare strategic plans, and then look into the next 3 years, next 5 years.
The respect for the normal business and governance procedures.
That is how companies are governed to be able to grow and become the large companies we see. But in the public enterprises space, historically, we have failed woefully doing that. And for the first time in the history of this country, this president is bringing in forcefully that culture of corporate governance, which has made the private sector enterprises take and grow into the public enterprise space. So, since I took charge, we've been pushing the edges of financial reporting, because Public Financial Management Act is there requiring that they report. SIGA Act is there requiring some compliance reporting.
And it's a continual
so
theme of the Auditor General's reports that public enterprise has not submitted audited accounts, to the state authority. But how do you begin to enforce that good governance and those processes of accountability? We know that you have introduced the Public Enterprise League Table, which I think launched just, was it last year?
Yeah, the maiden edition, yes.
The maiden edition was last year, to begin to encourage the good performers in the sector.
Exactly.
It also sets some kinds of performance indicators by which companies can begin to match what they're doing. So it gives them, a sense of where they should be at, where they can aspire to even if they haven't quite got to.
Yeah.
What other measures are you thinking of introducing? I mean, the disposal of assets that are dodos is a good start to say that if you're defunct, you're defunct, and we're not going to pretend to keep you on our books. But in addition to that, and things such as the league tables, what other plans do you have that may relate perhaps to larger entities within SIGA's control and under the scope of your secretariat to encourage state-owned assets to perform better?
Yes, we are strengthening performance contract signing. Every year, come sign performance contract as required by the SIGA Act, the SIGA law. As an entity, you sign performance contract with SIGA, where performance parameters are set.
Every year?
Every year. And you are supposed to attain them. And then there's monitoring of these performance in the course of the year, and assessment end of the year. And that is what actually goes into the Public Enterprise League Table.
Right.
That you rank the performance, which is an innovation I brought to the sector.
Sure.
You rank the performance. That this company, in terms of performance, was number one.
And if you fail to meet the targets set for you, what's the comeback? Are there sanctions?
Yes. There are two aspects of it. Failure, I keep saying, you set a performance target, you failed to attain them. Question is that what are the causes of the failure? What caused it? Let's use STC's example. If you look at their plan before COVID set in, they were on growth path.
They were on a
Ghana
growth
Airport
tangent.
Company Limited to the aviation industry on growth path. So the fact of the year 2020 failing to achieve a performance target may not be the fault of the management.
No.
So you do assessment and see the source of the failure. Was it an over-ambitious target set or fair target set, but some industry development set in and you couldn't? But when there is a failure and it's consistent, that industry, that's the whole industry, no problem, but the failure is traceable to non-performance of the CEO or non-performance of the board, then you have an appropriate action to take. You may make recommendation to the appointer that this person for the past 3 years, with no fault, no unexpected industry development like a COVID or a Ukraine war, or it's not performing.
No God-determined event that is
Exactly.
beyond your control.
A fundamental thing like prepare accounts, and end of the year, end of an accounting year or financial year, by February ending, prepare accounts. By April ending, submit audited accounts. If you are failing at this, then you can't manage our taxes. You can't manage public investment, because this is fundamental for the owner, the state, and the public to see whether you are doing well or not. Prepare accounts, get it audited for us. If you are failing consistently at this, why are you sitting there? You don't want to be accountable to the public investment in you. No, this shouldn't be acceptable. So there are parameters that if you are failing constantly at them, I'm sorry, a recommendation have to be made for not your removal, but your replacement.
A change of leadership, you say, like a little bit of not musical chairs, but certainly movement on the deck.
Exactly.
Right. So Honourable Judge Cudjoe, if you could give us an idea, you've announced your intention to dispose of these assets. Is there a time frame for within which you hope to have disposed of them? And then what is the next step as the Ministry of Public Enterprise is working in concert with SEGA for beginning to hold state-owned entities to greater accountability to the government and indeed to the taxpayer?
Time frame, I must say, I wish even today. But I wish.
Let me call my bankers.
Well, I wish you'd brought pictures of the asset that you used in your briefing yesterday, because maybe we could do a bit of publicity for you.
I wish today. If I wished today, it is because government has borrowed and paying interest on them. And if you have asset to dispose of them and pay your loans, individual bondholders are picketing. If today some disposal comes and you can pay some retirees' pension, it's better.
Yeah, and it's taxpayers' money, as you say. It's the money that we have invested in the
and
state.
it's fungible. So I wish today, but disposal of such asset, like I said, takes a little time because valuation will have to be done. Ownership perfection, that the state really has it. These entities sit on land. Do we have the document intact? Does any work have to be done? As also transaction advisors come in, do diligent work on them, and then private investors that are interested would express their interest, negotiations done, and so it takes a little time, difficult to set a particular deadline, but we need these disposals done quickly. For me, as a review of the public enterprise portfolio, that those that are junk, get them off so that they don't get my attention again.
So you can focus on
so
the
that I
ones
can focus
that
on
you
those
can
that
do
are
something
working
with.
and have growth potential to generate jobs. The private sector comes in with the defunct ones. They also bring in their capital to generate jobs, and jobs from the defunct. The economy takes in this sense. So we are working as fast as we can. Yes.
Yeah. So of the 175 state entities that you mentioned, apparently you've been able to get round to a good chunk, but still a lot to go. You visited, is it 44?
44
of the institutions
within short time, and interacted directly with management. And some numbers will excite you and your listeners. You see, when we took reins of power, only 2 companies in 2016 audited their account. Can you believe it? Two.
Single two.
Single 2. Or submitted audited accounts. Only 16 prepared accounts. And Ghana Publishing Company, you talked to David Asante, the MD sitting there today.
He's done a great turnaround.
When he took power, he turned the place around. Now it's sweet to work there. It was like a typical public enterprise space. And he had to clear a backlog of accounts more than 8 years. Yes.
8 years.
8 years. No account prepared under the previous regime, not a single account. How can you check corruption when companies are not preparing accounts? They are just doing whatever they want. No. So for me, the biggest anti-corruption measure the president has taken is this push for public enterprises to comply with the Public Financial Management Act. That's end of February, bring your account. End of April, bring audited account. So that SIGA can peruse it and assess your performance.
How many submitted accounts in the past year?
In the year 2017, the audited account improved to 5. Don't forget that year you had taken over reins of government. But 2018, 44. And 2019, 65. 2020, 79. And 2021, 95.
It's the majority
getting
now.
Exciting, yes. It's getting exciting. Now, the Committee on Employment, Social Welfare and State Enterprise of Parliament now have audited account to also peruse and bring in their oversight efforts to also make sure the public enterprises are performing. So this is how far we've come. And when it comes to account preparation, in fact, there's a report that has been generated because state ownership report (SOR), the state ownership report in the year 2018 had only 18 companies reported on, but in 2017, 49 companies were reported on. 2018 it grew to 77, and 2019 it grew to 106 companies were reported on in that report. 2020, 132 companies were reported on. So now the public has information about these enterprises for us to look and review and say, oh, accumulated debt for the public enterprise sector is 5 point this and reduced to 2.16 billion. Accumulated profit is this, accumulated dividend is that. Now we have information because they are preparing accounts, they are getting the accounts audited. Ghana has taken one enormous step, very good one, that the whole of government prepares what we call whole of government consolidated account. That you look at all sources of money, all sources, whether from the tax revenue that lands, tax and fees and fines revenue that ends in the consolidated account, statutory funds, IGFs, donor fund, everything that is an inflow so far as government is concerned, and then looking at the outflow, the use of it. The whole of country account is being prepared for MDAs, that is bring together ministries, departments and agencies, which is central government, and then MMDAs, metropolitan, municipal and district assemblies, which is local government, that is central government, local government, and then SEs, state enterprises, which is my purview, and we're saying 175 now. So all the cash inflows from these three and the cash outflows so far as their use is concerned, you're preparing account at the entity level and consolidate them into whole of government account. There can't be a better accountability of our monies than this. So you want to capture every source into one account. That effort, starting in 2020, the SE sector, state and that is the specified entity sector, the SIGA sector, were able to contribute 19 companies that we had the data format to contribute into that account, 19, and then grew to 47 in the year 2021, and the 2022 whole of government account, 62 companies have been captured in whole of government account.
So greater accountability,
yes, transparency
of
information. Yes,
what's going on in these companies.
The public would be able to scrutinize, not few people in a corner able to scrutinize. That's the president's vision. That we throw all the information out there so that everybody's effort, everybody's energy comes on board for all of us to scrutinize performance of the public enterprises we invest taxpayers' money into.
So it is, it's your money, it's our money, and it's up to us to hold the people who manage those monies and those assets to account.
Yes.
And your ministry is at the core of doing that and making it possible. Our great thanks to you, Joseph Cudjoe, for that great insight. I wish I'd been there at the briefing yesterday. Perhaps you might send us some of those pictures. Very interested to see these derelict site, but there is still some juice in them if you're the right person at the right site with the right plan for that particular business and what you could do with it, whether that's reviving it or whether it's taking an element of it that's useful. Our great thanks for joining us on the SRSA Breakfast Show and for being so generous with your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you for watching. Like, comment, share, and subscribe.